Craig Smoak.
So during the break, Paul Catalina calls Sam Bradshaw and asks him how he's doing after the baby, which was delivered last Tuesday. It's not like he's staying up at night taking care of the baby. Sam Bradshaw, Sick'em365.com, football analyst, Baylor off week, but we're going to get into some things. Sam, are you? No, I got this. I'll go handle it. Are you doing that in the middle of the night?
Yeah, I'm definitely getting up in the middle of the night. I'm doing what I can to take pressure off the wife, and definitely trying to do what I can to make it easier on everybody. So
I kind of get the feeling that when Craig and Jennifer were born, Smokey was just standing in the lobby handing out cigars.
No, I was there for both.
Okay.
I saw the miracle of birth. Believe me, I did. It's an amazing thing. All right, so did I see where you broke down the roster and how it was built? Was that your story, Sam?
Yes, I did that, and I also did a statistical look at how the Bears are looking this far into the season and how they're doing compared to other teams that have played against their competition.
So this was a roster that was initially built by Matt Rule and then, of course, cultivated from Dave Aranda and company. And what was the philosophy and what are the differences between what Matt Rule wanted, those players, and how they're performing and what Dave Aranda has been able to do to supplement it?
Well, thanks for having me on. And really, with Matt Rule, it was much clearer. And with Aranda, I think he's kind of co-opting a lot of different things that Rule was doing. I think it's a bigger departure from the prior staff before Rule. But effectively with Rule, he didn't care what a guy's star ranking was, but he didn't want anybody to be more athletic than his team. So if he saw a high upside guy with NFL measurables like offensive linemen with good mobility, arm length, things like that, if you had guys that could be 10-5 in the 100 meters, for instance, at skill positions, if you had guys with the frame that if you try and develop them and you hit, you've got not only an NFL player, but a high-round draft pick. That's what he was going for. That's how he got a lot of high-end talent to a place like Temple before he even got to Baylor. And you didn't see many guys that were undersized get recruited by Baylor, period. And that has paid off over the last few years. And that's how you end up with a defensive line as athletic as you have it. That's how you have a secondary where guys can break into the open, but more often than not, the Baylor secondary is going to be able to run them down unless it's just an absolute burner. And when you look across the roster, this team absolutely looks the part at almost every position.
Sam, what do you give to the turnaround on offense overall? That were they built for this? They just weren't necessarily achieving it last year.
Well, last year was disappointing on the offensive side for more reasons than just, we're not moving the ball. It's disappointing from the standpoint that there was so much more talent than what the production reflected. I mean, you're talking about most of the same offensive line that got you to the Big 12 title game the year before, and you added an all Pac-12 offensive lineman to that group, and you ended up where you were. You brought back the same quarterback. You had a really solid group of skill talent, but between COVID, between an offensive coaching room that just, it never really clicked with some of the guys he brought from LSU and Fedora's guys, and Wickline was having trouble with this offensive line. Just across the board, it didn't really click. They tried to do a lot of different things, and they really weren't able to get it to a point where they could do any one thing well. So they were trying to be a jack of all trades, but they ended up being a master of none. Here, they're going in with the identity, we are going to run wide zone, we are going to stress you laterally and let our running back get it north-south. And from there, we have several counters built off of it. And we have the kind of roster at tight end, at running back, at receiver, and at quarterback to absolutely make you pay if you try and overcompensate. We're going to force you to be disciplined on defense. And if you're not able to do that, you're going to have Abram Smith or Treston Ebner running free through your secondary. And from there, they simplified to the point that the execution's there. I mean, last year against West Virginia to this year against West Virginia, I understand Darius Stills is a great defensive lineman, but his graduation did not account for the difference here. The fact that Baylor didn't get it in his own way accounted for a lot of it.
Sam, with some of the deep passes downfield that BYU was able to connect on, that was really all they were able to hit on offensively. Aranda addressed a little bit in the post game. I'm looking around for concerns on this football team right now, and typically it'd be the O-line or a new quarterback. But as you've mentioned, like all those things have been great. There's not a lot to really, I think, be critical of with this football team. But just in terms of last week, what did you chalk up the results of some of those big pass plays to, and is it something that can be corrected rather easily?
Right, and if there's a concern on this team, it was the early weeks of the season where penalties and or turnovers were extending the amount of time that some weaker competition was able to stay in the game, or just the large amount of explosive pass plays that you gave up to Iowa State and to BYU. And Iowa State, a lot of that was really guys just blowing coverages on tight ends or running backs, and Iowa State taking advantage. With BYU, it was more of a mixed bag. There were a lot more plays where you had guys in phase in man coverage and the receiver adjusts to an underthrow, or they hit a perfect back shoulder fade. And those are tip the cap to the opposition plays where you made it really tough on them and they were up for the challenge. And then there were other plays where the corner is in deep outside third and the receiver's running a post route. And it's basically a bigger receiver who's got 2 or 3 inches on the guy boxing out for a rebound on that post route. And that's another tip your cap. And then there was one where it looked like the corner expected help. And that's the one where they really got deep, where if it wasn't underthrown, it would have been a touchdown. That one looked like it was a mental bust. But aside from that one, it was mostly BYU just making really good plays. And remember, Jaren Hall is a really good quarterback, and the 2 receivers who did almost all those plays, Puka Nacua and Gunnar Romney, those are 4-star recruits out of high school with verified times in the 4.5 range. Those are guys that are going to be starters at most Power 5 programs. That wasn't the scout team doing it to you, and you made it hard on them on a lot of those throws.
Sam, the Baylor defense said we're going to stop the run, and my goodness, did they ever? Did you expect them to be able to do that?
I thought it could go either way, just given how familiar Grimes was with them, but I didn't expect that. Nobody had really shut them down on the ground all year, so I expected Baylor to have some success, but I didn't expect them to be as dominant in the trenches defensively as they were. I mean, BYU's one explosive run was a quarterback read where either Petrie needed to stay home from the quarterback, or if Petrie's going to come off the edge and attack the running back, Bernard would have needed to scrape over the top on a scrape exchange to be ready for him, where you're basically trading who's responsible for which gap. Obviously, neither of those happened, and they got a 56-yard touchdown run with a very fast quarterback. But other than that, they really didn't have anything on the ground all day, and that's between that and Baylor's ability to just maul the BYU front, I expected Baylor to be able to get most of what they wanted underneath in the passing game, just given the personnel differences and speed differential and how conservative BYU typically is. And I expected them to keep the BYU pass rush at bay. But BYU's got some old dudes that have seen several off seasons of weight room work and are pretty stout. And to be able to run basically at will against that group was very impressive. I didn't see that level of success coming. I saw success coming. I didn't see that level of success.
So with a little bit of extra time, I mean, I know we'll talk to you next week, Sam, about UT, but just in terms of Baylor in this off week, things to work on of that nature, I know obviously a lot of it's going to be off the field with recruiting and whatnot, but what are you hoping what knives get sharpened, I guess, in preparation for Texas?
Defensively, you've got to be able to clamp down on those explosive plays. Simple recognition of what kinds of plays they might be throwing at you, that's going to go a long way. There were plays against West Virginia where they hit the slot post on an RPO that went for big yards. Can't afford to have the mental bust you had against Iowa State. That's certainly something that you're looking for, because I believe that Baylor's going to be able to score on that Texas defense. That Texas defense is a very athletic group, but I think they're a year away. I don't think they're necessarily comfortable in their system yet under the new defensive coordinator. I think they'll get there. I think they've got a good staff in Austin. But I think Baylor's going to be able to get moving on them. And I think they'll be able to get moving on TCU, who's struggling on defense for, maybe the third time this century.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, but both they and Oklahoma coming up, those three can really stress your defense. So while you definitely face some of the better defenses in the conference on the front end of your schedule, you're going to get some of the better offenses on the back end. So you definitely need to be ready for that challenge, because it's going to be a big step up going from playing Kansas and West Virginia to playing Oklahoma and Tech and Texas and TCU on offense. Those teams are moving the ball on most everybody, and that's going to be a challenge.
All right, so who do you have? Oklahoma State, Iowa State?
I normally don't bet against Gundy because he just finds a way to continually win. But as good as Oklahoma State's been, I fear that Iowa State's going to be very motivated. And I think their system is very well designed to limit the big play. And they'll be disciplined against a lot of the wide zone that Oak State runs. And I just think Spencer Sanders is going to cough up a turnover or two in a defensive game. And I think that'll be enough for Iowa State to eke it out. Wait, are they in Ames or are they in Stillwater?
They're in Ames.
Yeah.
All right. In Ames, cyclone warning.
Cyclone warning.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Should be a great game, though.
A
Should be
warning's
really
worse than a watch, right? A cyclone warning's worse than a watch.
Yes, a warning is a warning.
All right, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Sam Bradshaw and the father of a brand new one.
Yeah. Have fun with that, Sam.
Yeah. Used to like the changing the diapers when you had the little baby powder that always smelled so good.
You liked that?
The baby powder's cool. Yeah.
I mean, you can just get baby powder. You don't have to wipe another person's
No, there's
backside.
something special about baby powder on a baby's butt. It's just, it's a little bit, it's a special difference. Yeah.
I mean, there are, I didn't know that, there's not like a law that like you can go buy baby powder. They say, well, show me the baby. Well, you can just get
It's
it.
like showing your ID.
Yeah.
Well, then it's just powder.
Yeah. But
But baby powder is a different thing. You pop it all over the butt and, the diaper and all that stuff. And it's a different animal. All right. There's a